Hi, it's Samantha Shea from Wirecutter, the product recommendation service from the New York Times. We all know those people who are simply impossible to shop for. At Wirecutter, we have a huge collection of gift guides to help you find the perfect present. We test everything we recommend, from an ice cream subscription to a back massager to a trio of succulents. We believe there's a perfect gift for everyone, and Wirecutter can help you find it. Check out all our gift guides at nytimes.com/gift guides.
The Athletic.
The French Grand Prix at Le Mans is this weekend, and we've decided to use this opportunity to talk about the riders du jour, a topical name in MotoGP. That's right, Taka Nakagami, who is wildcarding for Honda this upcoming weekend. No, I'm of course talking about Fabio Quartararo, the hero of Jerez, and the local crowd will hope the hero of Le Mans too. But there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Fabio right now, even though he's not meaningfully in the championship picture, in the picture for anything. And in fact, I would be quite surprised if he finishes higher than 5th at Le Mans or something like that. Fabio, I think, is maybe in a situation where I can recall no other MotoGP rider being in ever, right? So he's turned 26 two weeks ago or so. He's already a champion, so nobody's taking that away. But looking at that age, and I just decided to go through it and look into it. By that age, Marc Marquez was a 5-time champion. Valentino Rossi was a 4-time champion. Jorge Lorenzo was a 2-time champion. Casey Stoner sealed his 2nd title when he turned 26. And like a year and a bit later, he was done with the sport, basically. Fabio has 11 wins in 116 starts. That's 1 in every 10. For comparison, Pecco Bagnaia has like 1 in every 4. Jorge Martin has like 1 in every 9. Enea Bastianini has basically the same rate as Fabio Quartararo. And when you talk about MotoGP's next alien, because we used to talk about the alien era of Dani Pedrosa, Casey Stoner, Valentino Rossi, Jorge Lorenzo, and then Marc Marquez. When you talk about MotoGP's next alien, when people don't say Pedro Acosta, they say Fabio Quartararo, and Fabio Quartararo actually has more of a case for it. And I cannot remember a situation in MotoGP where a guy is, so obviously on the rise, entering his prime, age 26, his best MotoGP years ahead of him. And he's finishing 8th every other weekend. And people, I imagine in the paddock, but certainly outside the paddock, go, man, that guy in 8th, he sure is something. He would be something if he had the bike. That feels like, MotoGP used to be, haves and haves nots. You showed something, you got a bike that at least, if it doesn't win the championship, it's going to win you a few races every season. It's strange, isn't it? Can you remember a situation like that with anybody?
I mean, yeah, but here's the thing that you have to remember, right? Back in those days, there was like 4-6 bikes a season that could win a race.
Yeah.
So how many, and then all the other bikes weren't bad, they were terrible.
Yes.
So how many people were on absolute pieces of garbage that never, ever, ever had a chance to fight for a title that were actually much better than we anticipated them being?
I think a lot of them.
So maybe that's partly what it is. It's also worth remembering that this is like my, stat that I always come back to in this. Mick Doohan didn't win his first title until he was 29.
Right. So
you can age into it a bit. You can age into it. Like Quartararo still has time to be a multiple world champion. And, at the end of the day, the situation he's in, the position he's in with Yamaha is one he chose to be in. He could be fighting for the title in a satellite Ducati right now, arguably.
Arguably, yeah.
He could be. I mean, if he'd signed a Ducati contract, I would hazard a guess that Pramac wouldn't have went to Yamaha.
Yeah.
If they had the chance to get Fabio.
Or the alternative would have been Fabio Di Giannantonio being told to seek alternate employment and Fabio riding for Valentino Rossi.
But I genuinely, I think that like Pramac left because they knew they had no realistic hope of defending their title anyway.
Yeah.
But with Fabio, that would have been different. And Fabio on a GP25 at Pramac right now would not be celebrating his first podium of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that completely. Although again, we never know how a new rider clicks with a new bike.
No, of course.
You've made the point that we've never seen Fabio on anything else other than a Yamaha M1. And of course, in his career, there were seasons, not in MotoGP. In MotoGP, I would argue he's been excellent throughout, but before MotoGP, in certain conditions in Moto3, etc., certain injuries, certain environments, didn't take the best out of him. So when it's one team rider, you never know for sure. But I only say that as devil's advocate. I think Fabio Quartararo and Ducati would have tore it up. We didn't speak Ducati coming into the season, right? It was more, Aprilia was interested.
Yeah.
It was known that Aprilia was interested, but could not match the financial commitments that Yamaha produced. Also, I think we're now seeing there's no scenario in which Aprilia develops two concurrent, very expensive engine programs.
Exactly. It's not just about the money. It's about the resources that they can throw at the project to make it better. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen what Yamaha are currently able to do. They're building 3 MotoGP bikes at the same time just because Fabio wants to try something a little bit different but might not necessarily even race it. No one else can do that apart from Honda. No one else can do that right now.
Yeah.
Or would do it.
Yeah.
But I don't even think the Ducati budget is that deep. The KTM are currently paying their staff in M&Ms. So like there's not really anyone else, is there, that could and Aprilia have 7 people running the race department. So
yeah, and you last year, if you just took it in a pure bike vacuum, you'd have chosen the RSGP over the M1. I think that's still true, but it's not true by enough to where it offsets the massive money commitment or the future prospects.
The future potential. That's the thing, isn't it? It's the future potential.
Yeah, so the question would have been satellite Ducati, where you go to win again, like Marc Marquez did, or factory Yamaha, where you might win again at some point in the future, but right now you get, your bank account looks very, very good.
Yeah, but there's also, it's also worth remembering that Marc Marquez went to satellite Ducati to win races again, but still felt he had to go to the factory to win titles.
Yes.
So that is always what it comes down to, that, you satellite teams can't win championships. It is a very, very difficult thing to do, unless the only factory rider you have to beat spends most of the year in the gravel. And I think Quartararo knows that. He knows he has to have a factory team. And also he knows there's a major rule change coming, and who's going to be best placed to adapt to those rules quickly? Probably the manufacturer that can currently afford to build 3 MotoGP bikes at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's true. For me, the satellite thing is because only championships matter at this point. I think.
I wonder if they're building 3 MotoGP bikes at the minute, or 4.
You think they're building an 850cc inline 4 and V4?
Well, they might be at least have put together an engine concept for it. Yeah,
I'm sure. But
there's probably 4 different Yamaha engines in development right now.
But that has to be true for every manufacturer in terms of conceptually, at least give it a go.
No, I'd imagine everyone who's already on a V, no one's experimenting with an 850 inline.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe BMW is.
And then the rules say it has to be a 4-cylinder, so you've got a V or an inline. There's not a lot of flexibility in the rules anymore, much as I wish there was, because I wish people did stupid cool things like the V5 Honda, but we're not allowed to anymore. We can't have nice things.
I think the appeal of the satellite Ducati, even though Jorge Martin will tell you it doesn't work like that, but that it can potentially put you on a glide path to a factory Ducati. Once you prove repeatedly that you can nail this bike over and over and over again, and if you elevate yourself clearly above the factory riders and above everybody else in the camp, then sooner or later you'd be in that factory seat. But then there's no guarantee that by then that'll still be the best factory seat in MotoGP. So
yeah,
I don't think we're not here to relitigate Fabio's contract decision. I think it's worked out okay. But do you think, knowing him, having worked with him, do you think it eats away at him at all that, he's turned 26, obviously geriatric.
Oh, pensioner.
Very, very old. But do you think it eats away at him that it feels like there should be more titles there, certainly more wins? It feels like we're just there showing up to races right now.
I think it would eat away at him more if someone else was running away with it. But they're not. It's been a real, we're in the 4 years since he's won his title, we're probably going to have 3 different champions.
Yeah.
And I think that will probably calm him a little bit, because it makes him think that, look, this is the reality. With the exception of Marc Marquez, he's the best rider in the grid.
Yes.
And that's pretty much like that. He's head and shoulders above Pecco Bagnaia and Martin.
Am I a needless contrarian if I say I don't know that we need with the exception there, or at least it's up for discussion for me?
I don't know. Is the honest answer. I don't know where in a straight fight. I don't know where they sit against each other.
Yeah, I agree.
That's because we've never really seen it. I mean, the last time we saw them competitive, Fabio against each other, Mark won everything, but Fabio was a rookie.
Yeah.
So, and Mark was in a much more difficult bike than Fabio's and whatever. So we've never really got a true measure of them. But he is at least one of the top two riders in the championship by a long way in terms of talent. So, and he knows that.
Yeah.
Because he's a motorbike racer and they all have massive egos, and he will be there's probably people who are much less successful than him who also think that, but deep down he's got to know that. So I think that'll be his reassurance that his time is still going to come. And he's clearly betting that there's going to be a really, really, really good 850 Yamaha turn up, and that he's then just going to win 4 titles in a row like Mick doing. And he's young enough to be able to do that. He'll rack up his championships. He won't stress.
I wonder if that's part of the, because when you see maybe the way MotoGP is casually discussed online with people who don't necessarily tune in every week, you sense that sort of frustration of, it used to be very simple to understand. There was the Valentino Rossi era where every year you would know Valentino Rossi would either be up there or would have walked away with the title already. Then sort of with a bit of a gap, it turned into the Marc Marquez era of the same thing happening on his end. And right now it's sort of the wilderness years.
Yeah.
And I think when you've talked about Pedro Acosta, you've seen Acosta as a potential candidate to sort of stamp his authority on future years in MotoGP. But of course, in a different MotoGP formula, if MotoGP was more like it was 10 years ago, and there are some ways in which maybe that would be welcome, but certainly others in which no thanks. Fabio Quartararo could be just making the championship his own year after year after year, because he would have been not only just talented enough to do it, but also in a position as the lead talisman rider of a extremely big money manufacturer that could just make it happen for him over and over and over again. So it's kind of good that we don't have that in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. It is. I've just realized that there's a very obvious Game of Thrones reference to make with 5 world champions on the grid, and this being the War of the 5 Kings. But I'm not sure who that makes Fabio at the minute. It could be a lot more boring if he was on a really good bike. And if he were in a factory Ducati, would Marc Marquez have found his way onto one? I don't necessarily think so. If Fabio had been there a long time, So I think at least we're seeing a bit of competitiveness at the minute. At least we're seeing a bit of interesting, goings on, because it could be quite boring, especially with the way that Fabio and Yamaha win races, which is qualifying pole position, leading the first lap, and then never be seen again.
Yeah.
So could be worse.
That's also an important part, because I'm not here to make the argument that even, current Fabio is more naturally talented than current Marc, etc. Again, Marc is, in certain aspects, the stuff he does good, and he does everything good, but the stuff he does great, he does so well that nobody else can ever touch him. The first lap out of the pits on a soggy track or whatever with dust on it, etc. Certain types of track layouts can't touch him. Untouchable. Not, you're not going to be in the same conversation. But what Fabio has turned into, from a rider who may be coming out of those junior categories, when you see a guy winning titles at 14, 15, whatever, you expect him to be quite raw, maybe, and maybe not always they'll escape that sort of raw talent thing. Fabio has become extremely rounded as a rider, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of the weekend performance, because he started out as this fantastic, qualifying dynamite. Then sort of turned into a race specialist, which happened along with the bike, but also, looking at his teammates. There was maybe a season or two where I'd look at him and I'd look at, teammate Franco Morbidelli then. And it was specifically, I think, Morbidelli's final season, where qualifying he was ahead, but he wasn't like dominating him the way some teammates get dominated. And then in races, he just kill him every time.
But I mean, like this is something I think that we've learned in modern MotoGP, right? We know that qualifying is often harder than racing. Mm-hmm. It's harder to do one flying lap. You speak to a lot of the rookies. Yeah. It's harder to do one flying full committed lap than it is to do 25 laps that are a second lap slower because it's race.
Not to make fun of him, Raul Fernandez still hasn't. That's still not in his reservoir.
Exactly. And arguably, the guys that have really, really shone in MotoGP are the rookies that have found the one-lap pace before they found the race pace. Quartararo and Jorge Martin.
Yes.
Now, there's been other really fast, really impressive rookies, but they've not done it that same way.
Yeah.
There's been others that have kind of... I'm looking at Nea Bastianini.
For sure.
Joan Mir.
Brad Binder.
Exactly, super fast guys, but they're guys who either got the race pace before they got the one lap pace, or got the race pace and never really got the one lap pace.
I think for all three, that's totally fair.
Whereas there's other guys that have just come in and immediately went bang, I can go one lap really, really fast.
Yeah,
I mean, there is an argument that Pecco Bagnaia had a bit of that early on in his career
because of the Sepang test. I know where you're going with this.
And arguably the guy that we're looking at right now that's doing it is Ayagura.
Yeah.
Who's delivering really impressive one lap pace considering he's in Aprilia. But that to me, that's a sign that someone's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Really fast. And I'm not surprised that, we're seeing Quartararo now turning that into a more rounded thing. But he's done a really good job of it. He's a fairly complete MotoGP rider right now. Like it's impressive.
I think I was going to make the argument like he's totally complete. That, of course, isn't true. I think in low grip and mixed conditions, still, nah.
Yeah, but I'm curious how much of that is bike.
I'm gonna say I was more sympathetic to that argument before this year, and we've seen Jack Miller in those conditions on that bike.
Yeah, but also it's Jack Miller. It is literally his specialist subject.
But if you're the best of the best, like Mark is the one rider on the grid who goes toe to toe with Jack Miller and maybe even exceeds him a little bit in those conditions.
Yeah.
So I think that's one area where Fabio is. He's more Jorge Lorenzo than Marc Marquez.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
However, he's again an amazing qualifier this year. Again, so that's back. Still a very, very, very potent in terms of the race pace that the M1 allows him to extract. He barely crashes.
Yeah.
He just barely. Yeah. And when he crashes, the good thing about it is, you go to a media debrief and there's never I don't know what happened.
No.
Oh yeah, I was pushing. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
But like this is the guy who took until Sachsenring in July of his rookie MotoGP campaign to crash.
Yeah.
All the way through testing, everything. Like he just doesn't crash.
And again, the Yamaha helps on this one. I think that's fairly inarguable. It's compliant front end, and the way Fabio uses that front end is clearly conducive to staying on the bike.
Yes. Yeah. Much like we've seen Marc Marquez become much less of a crasher now that he's not riding a Honda. Mm-hmm. That was all about the front end.
Yeah. But also the Ducati does seem to create those crashes that are sort of puzzling for riders. That Yamaha,
it's not create a different type of crash for it, but just not the Honda front end. Yeah. But no, like you say, Fabio just doesn't really crash. He never really has, and you can put some of it to the bike, but you can't put all of it to the bike because Jack Miller's riding the bike,
and for we've liked his start. So we'll get to Jack in a second, but certainly he's shown that you can in fact crash a Yamaha.
Oh, you can. Yeah,
considerable.
Miguel Oliveira's also shown that you can be crashed into in a Yamaha.
That one I didn't really doubt. But
poor Miguel.
I think we should talk vaguely a little bit about Fabio Quartararo future and Yamaha rider future and all that fun stuff. But before we get to that, Simon, is this like apart from, obviously Mark, but Mark's, career is, it's fair to say, I think, in its final years, I guess whoever knows with modern sports. And he isn't, I say that, but like he's the same birth year as I am.
Pensioner.
I don't know how I feel about that, but anyway, I guess I don't love it. What I'm trying to say is, he's obviously the face of the championship, but isn't around for another decade or whatever. Fabio Quartararo is around for another decade. he is the only other rider who's currently in that sort of orbit, right? In terms of the outside of the MotoGP hardcore public support, and outside of the local support, even. Like, it's not like there's only a super engaged French fan base for him or whatever.
Well, I mean, there isn't even that an engaged French fan base, because he's from the south of France. So he's a sun-loving southern beach poser, whereas the French fans love Zarco because he's actually, drinks wine and plays bowls and does more typical French things.
So, like, obviously you don't want the championship to orchestrate who goes into which seats for marketing, etc. Although, it championships happens. Do that. Yeah, but we're missing a trick a little bit right now by not having one of the two most marketable and popular guys in the championship. Popular specifically with the type of people, age-wise, demographic-wise, that the championship wants to attract. Are we missing a trick here that we don't have them fighting at the front week in, week out?
I mean, let's be honest, this is modern MotoGP run by Dorna. If we're missing a trick, it's that they're really, really bad in capitalizing on the fan base that he's built and selling him to the audience, regardless of his results. Because, I mean, I feel like mid-pack F1 drivers with a similar audience, fan base demographic to Fabio have proven that you don't actually need to be massively successful to have a huge, rabid fan base.
That's absolutely true.
Looking at like until this year, kind of the Lando Norris thing, where he's always had a really massive, like, engaged fan base. Yeah. Charles Leclerc isn't exactly
I wouldn't have picked those two. I'd say those two have been. I know what you mean, but
yeah,
I would have picked guys like like your Esteban Ocons and your Yuki Tsunodas.
I'm trying to think of people who've had success but not been. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like Charles Leclerc seems like a good Fabio comparison. They're from literally down the road from each other. They've both been had exceptional days on their day. They're both, working for factories that should be better than they are.
Yes.
You see where I'm coming from. You see where I'm coming from. And Charles Leclerc has that fan base because the most iconic piece of Formula One commentary from the last 20 years I could think of is that last lap in Monaco.
Mm-hmm.
And F1 have done a great job of using that clip to sell F1 and Charles Leclerc. There's nothing comparable from Fabio Quartararo. We've got a dancing CGI devil at Misano that's the worst thing I've ever seen. There's no comparable, because MotoGP is bad at storytelling. So I don't think Quartararo needs the results that he's not getting right now to be bigger than he is. I think he just needs someone to actually help him tell his story. I would really like to see Fabio Quartararo documentary, like the one that Pecco Bagnaia is doing at the minute, because Fabio is fundamentally a complete idiot behind the scenes, and I mean that the best of ways. That is high praise. But I shared an office wall with him for a while when I worked at Petronas. So I've spent a lot of time with him. I know what he's like. I know his little pre-race rituals that would crack you up if you saw them. And I know how much fun him and his best mate Tom has behind the scenes. And there's so much more to tell there. And I wish that we had a way to do it, but it ain't happening in MotoGP. So I don't think it's hurting the championship that he's not got the results anymore. In that there's a much easier, if you want to fix help the championship using Fabio, there's a much easier way to do it than to put him on a better, build him a better bike.
I don't know if it says something about us running out of material or me just knowing you too well, but when you said there's no comparison, my brain was like, oh, the CGI devil's about to come up.
No, it's not that we're running out of material. It is that it is literally the worst thing that has ever happened in MotoGP. It's awful. Oh my god. And I hate MotoGP winning celebrations anyway.
No, I agree.
No, so I think they're all over engineered faff at the best of times. But that was like, it was like because they hadn't been able to do one with Joan Mir because of COVID. It's like they spaffed 2 years budget on one and just needed to spend cash on things. So they had a CGI dancing devil that no one could see because it wasn't actually there in real life.
Right, I'm about to get this episode delisted, but firstly, I quite liked the Jorge Martin Terminator thing last year, but also I've been watching the NBA playoffs and the Pacers walking off the Bucks and Tyrese Halliburton after winning it, just standing on the wall in front of the fans and like looking at the crowd, so much better than anything you can engineer, like any jokey, etc. Like just a guy standing in front of the crowd and soaking it all. That's literally all you need to make iconic shots. Like
the best celebration that MotoGP has had in as long as I can remember is those sprint podiums where they're in the crowd areas and there's 10,000 people around them screaming at them, standing a few meters away from them. Like championship celebration should be like that.
Yeah.
It should just be like that. That's all you need.
Yeah. It's not really like, if you want to do some theatrics, leave them for a few hours after the fact. Maybe that's fine, because like it messes with the emotion. That was a real tangent. Matt's not going to be happy.
This is what happens when we're left unsupervised.
It's like
his own fault.
We're like children. We're children. So Fabio,
also a child. He is. That's why we love him.
No, that's true. That's true. Fabio at Jerez again did the favorite Fabio move of talking to the media, in which he was asked a question about 2027, which I think specifically included the verbiage, "I know it's not guaranteed that you're going to be there." And Fabio made sure to but it's not guaranteed that I'm going to be there. I'm going to test the market, basically, is what he did. It's the Fabio Quartararo playbook of, playing free agency, and fair enough to him. I have no issue with that at all. He does it a lot more openly than most riders. And I think feels like Yamaha can't really tell him anything about that. Like, what are you going to do? Sack me? Fine me? Sure. So when you hear that, do you believe there could be something to that? Do you believe that we're going to get a proper Fabio Quartararo free agency? Like maybe, for instance, I am a firm believer that Honda should make a play. Just try it. Give it a go.
I mean, it's the boy who cried wolf. He's told us so many times that he's going to leave Yamaha because the bike's crap, that I think it's just his default state now. He forgets that the bike's not actually crap anymore, just still says it because it's what he's been saying for 5 years now. It's just, it is what it is. I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he's not mean enough to ask them to build him 4 different MotoGP bikes and then quit because none of them are good enough. And I don't think that any of them is going to be bad. I think that there's going to be an 850 Yamaha that comes along that is suddenly really, really quick again. Yeah. I mean, we've seen this before. The 800 Yamaha was really, really quick when it came along out of the box. And I think this will be pretty similar. I think that this bike will be fine. I think it's going to be quite competitive. And it means he'll still be with Yamaha in 2032 whenever we have to build 1000cc bikes again, because it turns out that the 850s are more dangerous than the 1000s, just like the 800s were more dangerous than the 990s.
I think we're also, in that 2032, there's also going to be Thursday Fabio sessions where he's like, well, might not stay for 33.
Oh, of course there are. Of course there are.
I might join.
Yeah. There'll be 2053 sessions when he's a Yamaha brand ambassador for life and still talking about the Aprilia contract they might offer him for next year to turn up and open dealerships.
Oh, man. That's part of the fun. We love all that. Also, obviously it's way too early to talk about anything like that, but the thing is, we don't know how much of Ducati's current advantage, for example, will be negated by the Michelin to Pirelli switch, even outside of even the bike specs, etc. So everybody is feeling around in the dark, and Fabio will be too once he goes into free agency. I mean,
the realistic thing is that we're going to see in the first year of such a huge colossal rule shift with new engines and less aero and new tires. Like, this is the biggest MotoGP rule shift since 2 strokes to 4 strokes. It's bigger than 990s to 800. It's bigger than going back the other way. It's bigger than Control Electronics or Bridgestone to Michelin or anything like that. This is the biggest row shift since in the 4-stroke era. We're going to see the manufacturers who are most capable of spending money on R&D come out on top.
Yeah.
And right now, there's only one manufacturer that's publicly told us they're building 4 bikes. Like Yamaha are spending money on that. They offered Fabio a massive contract to prove to him that both, not just to make him stay, but also to prove to him that they had the money to spend on this project. They hired a whole new Italian-based engineering team to run the show. To replace all their Japanese guys, which is massive. I don't for one second think they're not going to be at the very, very sharp end of the new rules. And I can't see him going anywhere. I think he's going to jump in the 850 and be like, oh, this feels like a motorbike on Pirellis.
Yeah. He's also, he is a little unlucky, I would say. And maybe like the riders who could really dictate the market are all a little unlucky in the sense that the contract cycle aligns with the new regulations debut. Because if it was offset for 1 year, for example, if the regs kicked in 28 or 26... then you'd have a much better idea of what you're signing up for.
I wonder actually if we'll see a flurry of like 1 year contracts.
But I think the really important ones will still be 2.
I don't know.
Because I think factories won't want to leave themselves vulnerable, and riders will ultimately, they do like longevity in terms of the money.
Yeah, but all it takes is 1 or 2 to sign 1 year deals. Yeah. And then that kind of triggers everyone else as well.
Yeah. It's interesting.
If suddenly Marc Marquez is on a 1 year deal and is available for 2028, then multiple other factories will sign riders on 1 year deals so that they can get rid of someone if Marc comes knocking.
Yeah. And if you go into preseason testing and then suddenly the Aprilia with the new bike is 15 seconds clear of everybody else, then you know how to play your market hand. You're not locked into
exactly
long-term deals. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out and whether they're still creatures of habit, I think. But
yeah, but it is such a substantial change that it might actually,
Well, speaking of 1 year deals, so we've talked about Honda's 1 year deals over and over and over again, and still will do continuously because it's fun and we like doing it. Yamaha has a 1 year deal on its roster currently, doesn't it? And that 1 year deal is Jack Miller. Still too early to really meaningfully discuss whether there's any talks going on, what they might be able to offer him, etc. But where you stand right now, Jack's staying on the Yamaha in 26, above 50% or below 50%?
Oh, way above.
Way above. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think what he's done this year in the opening races has been super strong, super impressive. He's been fast. Been really fast, and I think there's got to be, even injuries aside, what we saw from the adaptation process and the early performances.
Yeah,
I think there's probably a little bit of regret inside Yamaha that they've signed the wrong rider in a 1 year deal.
Maybe,
and that maybe Jack should have been in a 2 year deal, and it should have been Miguel Oliveira in a 1 year deal.
Yeah,
I don't really see, or both of them should have been in 1 year deals, to be fairer. I don't really see a world in which Jack is in much danger, but I think Miguel's probably quite lucky.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah, I agree, and it's he's also very, very unlucky, so that's where all of this stems from. Yeah. So obviously he started the season a little shaky, but he has literally not got the chance to show us in any way, shape, or form what anything resembling a ceiling there can be. So. I think I am sure Yamaha is well aware of that too, so there's not going to be any conversations in that regard at the Open anyway. I worry for him a little bit because it's so hard to get into a rhythm in season in MotoGP, so I am a little concerned
a la Franco Morbidelli.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a little worried as to how that's going to invite pressure that's undeserved, I fear.
Yeah, it is.
But that's modern MotoGP for you. Jack's case is helped by the fact that there's just no must-have Moto2 rider.
No, there's not. I mean, we were talking about this the other day in the paddock about this is the weakest Moto2 field in a long, long time. There's no one in this Moto2 field that is in any way deserving of a MotoGP seat in 26.
Well,
no one, not a single rider that stands out to me as.
When you say deserving, I mean, and we're going to get to this more in detail and more with specific names because we've been tasked with doing a members club special podcast on Moto2 and Moto3, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But just quickly, you say deserving, and I agree in terms of, the body of work, etc. But
Yeah.
you never know. Sometimes an undeserving guy like Fabio Quartararo, you put him on the bike and suddenly, oh boy. So,
but there's no one fighting for Moto2 races right now that you think he has to be in a MotoGP bike.
Yeah. Manu Gonzalez, if he continues in this vein, has to be on some form of MotoGP bike, but he's not a must-have talent.
He's not a must-have.
No, I agree.
His career progression, he's not a must-have.
Good rider.
That's the thing.
Not a must-have, yeah.
There's a lot of these guys who you have to look at how long they've been in Moto2 as well.
No.
Like Aaron Canet.
Yeah. And I mean, if you were insane, you just say go get Danny Holgado or something. But that's for another podcast.
But again, that's not going to happen in 26.
Yes. Yeah.
That's my point. There are people like Holgado, maybe like Alonso as he starts to show a bit of form, maybe even Moreira.
Yes.
But I think that they're 27 options, not 26 options at this point.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that, the Pramac guys have not come up because neither of them has had a particularly impressive start as, Pramac obviously debuting in Moto2.
I think it's the opposite for Tony Arbolino.
Yeah. With the
it's almost a career-ending start. His year has been so bad.
Yeah, and Ihsan Guevara has also not really just not kicked on, and they're probably not helped by the team having to learn the Boscoscuro. And
but I think there's good support there, and I mean Jake Dixon's racking up race wins on one, and a team that's just switched to it as well. So
so it's they're not there's no foreseeable event in which they're in the conversation right now, which is why Miller is above 50. I would say the only consideration with Miller, and I think it is an interesting one, is does Yamaha already have his peak? Like, does it already know this is the guy? Because he's good. This is fine. But there's I think KTM saw that the best version of Jack Miller it got over those 2 seasons was the Jack Miller out of the gate, was the Jack Miller in the season opener at Portimao, was it, or whatever?
Yeah.
And at Jerez, basically.
Yeah. And Jerez, yeah. But they've I mean, Yamaha are in no rush. That's the thing. And you can essentially poach a MotoGP or Moto2 rider at any point.
Yeah.
You can steal a Moto2 rider at Valencia at the final round because they all have contract options that say if a MotoGP team comes knocking, they can void their contract. So
worth also having a look who misses out in the Honda shuffle, and it is worth noting. I think Speedweek.com has quotes from Kenan Sofuoglu, Toprak Razgatlioglu's manager, suggesting that obviously the Honda thing has been well documented as a potential destination. Yeah, but suggesting that Yamaha is also in play. I think he's made it sound like an offer. I don't know how much I believe that. Although
the problem with Keenan's latest statements about the potential MotoGP future is the fact that Toprak's telling people he isn't going in 26. Which is why the Honda offer is the interesting one, because it's supposedly going to get a year in Superbikes first. But you'd be mad to go in 26, especially if you ride like Toprak, because it's all about front end. He would have blitzed it on Bridgestones, but he's going to struggle on Michelin's, especially for one season. Yeah. So just wait, just hold out now. There's no need.
Yamaha wise, obviously it's not Lynn Jarvis's house anymore. It's now Paolo Pavesio's house. Lynn Jarvis is still there or thereabout, but we know that Yamaha tested Toprak when Toprak was still a Yamaha rider, tested in a MotoGP, and we know that Yamaha did not see enough to make the move for MotoGP in terms of Toprak, and it would require, I think, the decision makers to change, or for Yamaha to learn something new about Toprak that it didn't know, which is that he's really good in World Superbikes. Hello, seen that, know it. Obviously, he's really good. He's universally good, but that's not new information necessarily. But we'll have a lot of chances to talk about Toprak again too. Yet, elephant in the room. Are we going to be a bit mean? Am I going to be a bit mean?
Probably.
I don't like it because he got hurt at Jerez, and he's been hurt. Generally speaking, he's living hurt. I don't know about this 2-year Alex Rins deal the way it's playing out right now.
I don't know where Alex is. I think Alex needs to first of all acknowledge that he's still struggling with injuries instead of telling us that he's fine, because he's clearly not. But I don't know where. I don't know if there's an off-ramp from the contract for either side.
No, and I don't think Yamaha would do that. I don't.
So I think he's kind of he's here for the foreseeable.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to see performances get any better or not. I mean, he has shown moments, which is more than could be said for last year. He's shown flashes.
Yes.
There was a long part of Monday's post-race test where he was comfortably P2 to Fabio.
Yes.
So there are moments, there are little splashes here and there of form, which is an improvement. Q2 is looking like a realistic prospect pretty much every weekend now for him.
I think that's more the M1 than him. But
I do too. Yeah. I do too. But he's still riding the M1. It's still a complete package.
No, fair enough.
And so it is. There are. We've went from a situation where at the very start of the year he was the third Yamaha at best to a position where he's now consistently better than Jack Miller. Consistently, as in on and off. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think Miller's just had such an untidy run in recent races that
he's out qualifying him. He's outperforming him.
Yeah, his bike did sort of just fail on him in the Spanish.
Yeah, but he also fell off like 3 times.
So did Alex Rins.
So Alex Rins only fell off once, but he
fell off twice in that practice.
Yeah,
just one of them was much worse.
Huge.
For me, I don't have any doubts that the contract will be honored for 26, etc. And nor am I saying it shouldn't be or anything like that. And I'm not saying like the performances are right now so bad that you cannot live with them, which they kind of were at some points last year. And this year, no, I don't think so. But like this is not enough for a 27 extension, for instance. There's no way. There's no way.
No way.
And
no way.
For me,
it's not even a contract extension. I don't think this is good enough for a 27 ride.
With anyone, yeah. Mm-hmm. I understand. And again, we don't know what's actually in there when he's at his peak physical condition. For me, the question is, what if he's telling the truth? Is that the injury is not the deciding factor in the gap? That it's just like a small contributor, and that the actual deciding factor, as he keeps telling us, is the way the bike is constructed. Fabio has learned perfectly how to ride it, and for Alex Rins, it just does not fit. It does not fit, and he said it again and again. He said it before the start of the season. He's been saying it during the season that he sort of from Yamaha, he needs a bike that is more tailored to what the specific mechanics and things that he is good at, and I presume also a bike that actually like uses the rear end at all meaningfully. But then
the problem
that's
is
the job.
But it's not even that. You're not going to get a bike tailored to you when your teammate is so much faster than you.
No, when your teammate is Fabio Quartararo, you need to ride the Quartararo bike.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the experiences of Danny Pedrosa.
Man, I haven't thought of that, but yeah, the Pedrosa parallel, that's a decent one. Obviously, another rider with a clean bill of health historically. So, well, look, we'll see how it plays out in Le Mans again. The most recent Rins weekend that we've seen, miles off Quartararo, but very, very hurt, starting last in both races.
Yeah, very hurt. I feel like we need to make that point.
No.
He was probably battered at the weekend.
None of this has been off Jerez. I'd like to make this very clear.
Yeah.
I think you and I have talked about the Rins situation. Like almost after every weekend, we're just sort of like, where are we at now, etc., etc. We're not new to this particular beat, and neither of us are under the impression that he's a bad rider somehow.
No, of course he's not.
Further from again, I've looked into those, and when I looked into Moto2 rookie seasons, just to see, because the best metric of whether you make MotoGP is what you do in your Moto2 rookie season. Yeah, Alex Rins was electric. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was superb.
It's crazy good. Yeah. He's the natural talent is there. It's just whether we're going to see it again at its peak for any sustained period of time in MotoGP. And let's hope Le Mans is the start of that. Well, that was actually quite a nice segue to end this. I'm learning.
Look at
natural
that.
now.
Look at that.
And honestly, the whole episode, quite happy. Just one reference to the NBA playoffs and Tyrese Halliburton. Good job, Val. See you guys next time for the post Le Mans podcast. Thank you for listening.
The Athletic.